Nathan Brooks stood before the full-length mirror in his penthouse bathroom, barely recognizing the man staring back at him. Gone was the meticulously groomed beard that had defined his public persona as the owner of Brooks Bikes, the Pacific Northwest's premier motorcycle dealership. In its place, 3 days of scruffy stubble clung to his jaw, lending him the rugged air of someone who'd spent more time on the road than in boardrooms. His usually impeccably styled hair, salt and pepper, with a touch of distinguished gray, was tucked beneath a faded baseball cap, its logo worn to a ghost of its former self. The tailored suits that had become his uniform were replaced by a pair of well-worn jeans and a leather jacket that smelled faintly of motor oil and time. He adjusted the fake prescription glasses perched on his nose, their plain frames completing the disguise. The transformation was jarring but necessary. No one would believe a supposed motorcycle enthusiast who looked like he'd just stepped out of a corporate jet. The idea had struck him 3 nights ago, during another restless evening, poring over quarterly reports in his study. Brooks Bikes, his pride and joy, had shown troubling patterns in customer satisfaction surveys. Nothing catastrophic, just subtle dips that might escape a less vigilant eye. But Nathan hadn't built an empire by ignoring details. 20 years ago, he'd started with nothing but a wrench, a dream, and a garage that doubled as his bedroom. Now, with showrooms gleaming across 3 states, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping through his fingers. Time to see how the other half lives, he muttered, his voice low, almost lost in the hum of the city beyond his window. The irony wasn't lost on him. The man who'd once been a grease-stained mechanic now had to dress down to blend in with the very people he'd once been. Nathan's fingers lingered on the leather jacket, a relic from his early days when he'd ride through the Cascades, the wind carrying his worries away. He could still feel the vibration of his first bike, a beat-up Yamaha he'd rebuilt from scrap. That was the Nathan Brooks who'd founded Brooks Bikes, not the polished CEO who signed contracts and shook hands with investors. Tonight, he needed to channel that younger, hungrier version of himself. He slipped a worn wallet into his pocket, stuffed with just enough cash to play the part of Jake Sullivan, a software engineer who'd recently cashed in stock options and was chasing a midlife crisis on 2 wheels. The cover story was simple, believable, close enough to his own personality to maintain without slipping. But as he caught his reflection one last time, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. What if he found something he wasn't ready to face? The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint tang of pine as Nathan pulled into the customer parking lot of Brooks Bikes' flagship dealership in Seattle. He deliberately avoided his reserved spot near the entrance, the one marked with a discreet plaque bearing his name. His heart thudded with an unfamiliar nervousness, a sensation he hadn't felt since his first big sale 2 decades ago. He'd rehearsed his cover story countless times, but stepping out of his nondescript rental car, a far cry from his usual sleek Audi, felt like crossing a threshold into unknown territory. The glass doors of Brooks Bikes slid open with a soft hiss, and for a moment, Nathan paused, struck by how different the showroom felt from this angle. The space was a cathedral of chrome and leather, rows of pristine motorcycles gleaming under strategic lighting that caught every curve and contour. The subtle scent of polish and new tires filled the air, a detail Nathan had personally insisted on when designing the dealership. It was meant to evoke the romance of the open road, and even now, it stirred something deep in his chest. A few early bird customers wandered between the displays, their faces a mix of awe and calculation, mentally tallying budgets against dreams. Nathan adjusted his cap, pulling it lower, and stepped inside, his boots scuffing softly against the polished floor. "Welcome to Brooks Bikes." The greeting came from a young woman with a bright smile and a name tag reading Lila Harper. Nathan recognized her from her hiring file, a recent addition to the sales team, but he'd never met her in person. Her enthusiasm seemed genuine. Her posture relaxed yet professional. "Can I help you find anything specific today?" she asked, her eyes scanning him without judgment. Nathan hesitated, slipping into Jake Sullivan's persona. "Just looking for now," he said, pitching his voice slightly higher than his natural baritone. "And saving up for a while, you?" "No. Want to make sure I get it right." He forced a sheepish grin, the kind a first-time buyer might wear. "Of course." Lila's smile widened. "Feel free to browse. Our newest Ducati Panigale V4R just came in. It's a stunner if you're into sport bikes. Want me to walk you through it?" "Not yet, but I'll keep it in mind," Nathan replied, nodding. Lila didn't hover, instead giving him space while remaining attentive, a textbook approach he drilled into his staff. For the next few minutes, he wandered the showroom, running his fingers along the sleek frames of a Combs of a Triumph Bonneville and a Harley-Davidson Softail, asking Lila detailed questions about specs and customization options. Her answers were precise, her passion for the bikes evident in the way her eyes lit up when describing the roar of a V-twin engine. Nathan made mental notes, impressed but cautious. Something about the dealership felt off, though he couldn't yet put his finger on it. As he moved toward a limited edition BMW K1600 GTL, its price tag well into six figures. He caught snippets of conversation from other customers, a low hum of excitement and negotiation. The showroom was alive, but beneath its polished surface, Nathan sensed a current of unease, like a faint vibration in a perfectly tuned engine. He glanced at Lila, who was now assisting another customer, her smile as warm as ever. Was she part of whatever was nagging at him, or was he projecting his own paranoia? "Thanks for the help," he called to her, playing the undecided buyer. "I'll probably be back after I think it over." "Take your time," Lila replied, waving. "Where?" "Here when you're ready." Nathan stepped back into the morning light, the glass doors sliding shut behind him. His rental car waited in the lot, unremarkable among the sea of vehicles, but his mind was racing. He'd come here looking for minor flaws, maybe a lapse in customer service or a policy violation. Instead, he'd felt the first stirrings of something deeper, something that threatened the empire he'd built. As he slid into the driver's seat, Nathan Brooks knew one thing for certain. He wasn't done with Brooks bikes. Not by a long shot. Nathan Brooks, still cloaked in the guise of Jake Sullivan, lingered in the showroom of Brooks Bikes, his senses attuned to every detail. The morning sun streamed through the towering glass walls, casting long shadows across the polished floor, where motorcycles stood like silent sentinels of speed and freedom. The air carried the faint hum of ambient music, carefully curated to evoke the thrill of the open road, but beneath it, Nathan felt a discordant note, a subtle tension he couldn't yet name. He'd spent the last half hour wandering among the bikes, asking Lila Harper pointed questions about engine specs and financing options, testing her knowledge while observing the broader rhythm of the dealership. Lila had impressed him, her enthusiasm for the machines almost matching his own. But not every salesperson shared her spark. Some rushed through their pitches, their eyes darting toward the clock, more interested in closing deals than building connections. Nathan filed away each observation, his mind already drafting training protocols to address the lapses. Now, he stood before a BMW K160, its sleek black frame and chrome accents gleaming under the showroom's strategic lighting. The bike was a masterpiece, a limited edition model with a price tag that could buy a small house. Nathan ran a hand along its handlebars, feigning casual interest while scanning the room. He needed to push deeper, to see how the staff handled a high-stakes sale. Deliberately, he pulled out his worn wallet, letting it flop open to reveal a modest stack of bills and a dog-eared credit card. The move was calculated, designed to test whether the sales team would dismiss him as a dreamer or pounce on a potential commission dot as if on cue. Colin Hayes, the sales manager, materialized. Beside him, his polished shoes clicking against the floor. Nathan recognized him from staff meetings, a sharp dresser with a knack for reading customers, though his file hinted at a tendency to cut corners. Colin's smile was wide, practiced, but his eyes flickered over Nathan's faded jacket and scuff boots, a micro-expression of doubt crossing his face. "That's a beauty, isn't it?" Colin said, gesturing to the BMW. "Mind if I grab the keys? You can sit on it. Get a feel for the ergonomics." "Sure, why not?" Nathan replied, keeping his tone light, almost indecisive. He adjusted his fake glasses, playing the part of a nervous first-time buyer. As Colin retrieved the keys and released the security chain, Nathan straddled the bike, settling into its familiar contours. He'd ridden a prototype of this model during a factory tour in Munich, but he let his hands fumble slightly, as if unfamiliar with the controls. Colin launched into a polished sales pitch, highlighting the bike's cutting-edge suspension and heated grips. But Nathan noticed a subtle edge to his approach, a pushiness that skirted the line of pressure tactics. "What's your budget looking like?" Colin asked, leaning in conspiratorially, his voice dropping. "I shouldn't say this, but I might be able to work something out. The owner's a numbers guy, you know? Leaves the details to us." He winked, as if sharing a secret. Nathan suppressed a wry smile at the irony. The numbers guy was currently sitting on a $60,000 motorcycle, pretending to haggle. I've got some savings," he said vaguely, "but this is a big leap. Maybe we can talk discounts?" He watched Colin's reaction closely, noting the flicker of calculation in his eyes. The manager's response was smooth, offering a special deal that Nathan knew violated the dealership's pricing policies. Interesting, he thought, making a mental note to review Colin's sales records. The negotiation dance continued, with Colin deftly balancing charm and subtle coercion, but Nathan was only half listening. His attention snagged on a hushed conversation behind him, barely audible over the showroom's ambient noise. Two customers had drifted closer, standing near a row of vintage Harleys. One, a wiry man in a leather vest with faded tattoos snaking down his arms, spoke in a low, urgent tone. The other, younger, wore designer jeans and a watch that screamed money too flashy for someone supposedly browsing mid-range bikes. Nathan tilted his head, pretending to adjust the BMW side mirror, straining to catch their words. "You can get any bike here for half price if you know the right guy," Tattoo Arms murmured, his voice a conspiratorial hiss. "No paperwork, no tracking. All cash." Nathan's hands tightened on the handlebars, his knuckles whitening beneath the grime he deliberately rubbed into his nails. His pulse quickened, but he forced his expression to remain neutral, as if absorbed in the bike's sleek lines. Designer Watch glanced around, his posture casual, but his eyes sharp. "Who's the guy?" he asked, flipping through a glossy catalog with exaggerated disinterest. "Name's Vince," Tattoo Arms replied, pulling out his phone. "Warehouse. Manager. Been hooking people up for months. Never a complaint." The name hit Nathan like a physical blow. Vince Delgado, his warehouse manager of 3 years. The same man who'd suggested the new inventory tracking system, who always volunteered for late-night shifts. Nathan's mind raced, connecting dots he hadn't known existed small discrepancies. In stock counts, reports he'd dismissed as clerical errors. "How's it work?" Designer Watch pressed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Simple. You pick the bike. Vince marks it as damaged. It disappears during transport to the repair shop." Tattoo Arms made air quotes, smirking. "Shows up wherever you want. Half price, cash only. Nathan's grip on the handlebars was so tight his fingers ached. The missing inventory, the uptick in damaged units, it all clicked into place with sickening clarity. Someone was running a shadow operation right under his nose, tarnishing the reputation he'd spent 2 decades building. He forced himself to breathe, to maintain the facade of Jake Sullivan, even as his blood roared in his ears. Colin was still, talking, oblivious, rattling off financing options, but Nathan barely heard him. "I'll need to think about it," he interrupted, his voice steadier than he felt. "Mind if I walk around a bit?" "Big decision, you know?" "Of course." Colin handed him a business card, his smile unwavering. "I'm here all day. Just let me know." Nathan nodded, dismounting the BMW with legs that felt like lead. He moved away, careful not to glance at the 2 customers, though his peripheral vision caught their casual poses, their too careful nonchalance. The showroom's gleam suddenly felt hollow, its polished surfaces hiding shadows he'd never noticed. Somewhere in his dealership, someone was betraying everything he built, and Vince Delgado's name was the first thread in a tapestry of deceit. Nathan's heart pounded as he meandered toward a display of helmets, his mind already racing. Toward his next move. He needed proof, and he needed it fast. Nathan Brooks sat in a corner booth of a dimly lit coffee shop, 2 blocks from Brooks Bikes, the glow of his laptop screen casting shadows across his face. The place was a far cry from the gleaming showroom he'd left an hour ago, with its chipped formica tables and the faint scent of burnt espresso hanging in the air. Outside, Seattle's midday bustle unfolded through the fogged-up window, pedestrians hurrying under umbrellas, cars splashing through puddles, but Nathan was oblivious to it all. His world had narrowed to the spreadsheets and reports spilling across his screen, each line a potential clue to the betrayal festering within his dealership. The worn leather jacket of his Jake Sullivan disguise hung over the booth's edge, and his baseball cap rested beside a now-cold Americano. He was no longer just a curious owner. He was a man on the hunt. The conversation he'd overheard in the showroom replayed in his mind like a looped recording. Vince Delgado, his trusted warehouse manager, orchestrating a scheme to sell bikes. Off the books for half price. The words had struck Nathan like a wrench to the gut, shattering the pride he'd felt in Brooks Bikes. 20 years of building a reputation for integrity, of ensuring every sale was above board, and now this, shadow operation run by someone he'd handpicked. Nathan's fingers flew across the keyboard as he logged into the dealership's system remotely, a feature Vince himself had recommended installing. The irony was bitter. Like the coffee he hadn't touched, he started with the inventory records, pulling data from the past 6 months. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Shipments logged, bikes assigned to showroom or storage, sales matched to customer contracts. But Nathan hadn't built an empire by accepting surface truths. He cross-referenced the damaged units' bikes marked for repair against their original shipping manifests. A pattern emerged, subtle but unmistakable. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, like clockwork, a high-end model Ducatis, BMWs, limited edition Harleys was reported as damaged during transport. The paperwork was impeccable. Standardized forms, identical diagnostic codes, consistent repair cost estimates. Too impeccable. Real damage reports were messy, filled with mechanics' shorthand and varied descriptions. These read like they'd been copied from a template. "Clever, Vince," Nathan whispered, his voice barely audible over the coffee shop's low hum. But not clever enough. He opened another window, pulling up the repair facility logs. The bikes marked as damaged never reached their destination. Instead, they vanished, their serial numbers reassigned to junked units in a sleight of hand that made the books balance. Nathan's jaw tightened as he calculated the losses, not just in dollars, but in trust and the legacy he'd poured his life into. his thoughts drifted to Vince Delgado, the man he'd hired 3 years ago after a glowing interview. Vince had been a model employee, punctual, innovative, always volunteering for late-night inventory counts. He'd even suggested the new digital tracking system, which Nathan had praised as a game-changer. Now, that system looked less like progress and more like a Trojan horse. Nathan opened Vince's personnel file, scanning the details he'd once skimmed with approval. Clean background check, no criminal record, excellent references from 3 previous dealerships. But something nagged at him, a flicker of instinct honed by years of reading people. He opened a new tab and began searching for the dealerships listed in Vince's resume. The results were a punch to the chest. The first dealership, a small outfit in Spokane, had gone bankrupt shortly after Vince's departure, citing unexplained inventory losses. The second, in Boise, had suffered a warehouse fire ruled as arson, though no suspects were named. The third, in Portland, had closed following an insurance fraud investigation. None of the cases directly implicated Vince, but the pattern was undeniable. He wasn't just a dishonest employee. He was a professional, moving from dealership to dealership, setting up sophisticated theft operations and vanishing before the net closed. Nathan leaned back, his mind racing. How had he missed this? Had he been too busy signing contracts, too distant from the day-to-day grind, to notice the wolf in his fold? The barista approached, her apron stained with coffee grounds. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked, eyeing his untouched cup. "I'm good, thanks," Nathan muttered, barely glancing up. She shrugged and moved on, leaving him to his digital excavation. He pulled up the employee scheduling system next, curious about Vince's role in the warehouse. Over the past 6 months, Vince had subtly shifted the staffing rota, ensuring he was alone during those critical Tuesday and Thursday night shifts. The changes were so gradual, spread across departments, that no one had flagged them. Nathan's respect for Vince's cunning grudged against his growing anger. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment scam. It was a meticulously planned heist. His phone buzzed, jolting him from his thoughts. A text from an unknown number. Meeting confirmed. 11 p.m. tonight. Bring cash. Nathan's breath caught. They must have gotten his number from the customer information card he'd filled out as Jake Sullivan. The audacity of it, their confidence that they could operate so openly, sent a chill down his spine. He stared at the message, his mind splitting into 2 tracks. The investigator urging caution, and the betrayed owner itching to confront Vince then and there. He typed a quick response to buy time. "Sounds good. I'll be there." Then he pocketed the phone, his decision made. Tonight's meeting wasn't just a chance to catch Vince in the act. It was the key to unraveling the entire operation. Nathan glanced out the window, where Brooks Bike's neon sign glowed faintly in the distance, its blue light cutting through the drizzle. The dealership had been his sanctuary, a monument to his dreams. Now, it felt like a house built on sand, its foundations eroded by those he trusted. He closed his laptop, the weight of his discovery settling like a stone in his chest. Vince Delgado was just the beginning. Whoever else was involved, whatever their motives, Nathan would find them. He slipped his cap back on, the brim casting, his eyes in shadow, and stepped into the rain. A man with a mission and a secret to expose. A Seattle night was thick with mist, the kind that clung to skin and blurred the edges of reality. Nathan Brooks parked his nondescript rental car 3 blocks from Brooks Bikes, the dealership's neon sign casting a ghostly blue glow against the sky. To anyone watching, he was just another shadow in the urban sprawl. But beneath the brim of his baseball cap, his eyes burned with purpose. The text from the unknown number meeting confirmed. 11 p.m. tonight. Bring Cash had set his course. This wasn't just about catching Vince Delgado in the act. It was about ripping the veil off the conspiracy, threatening to dismantle everything he'd built. Nathan checked his equipment one last time. Phone fully charged, a small video camera tucked in his jacket, a voice recorder humming softly in his breast pocket. "Just like old times," he muttered, the words carrying him back to his early days, wrench in hand, rebuilding bikes in a garage lit by a single bulb. Only now, if he wasn't fixing machines, he was salvaging his legacy. He moved silently through the alleyways, his boots soft against the damp pavement, until he reached a vantage point overlooking the dealership's service lot. The area was dark, save for the stark pools of light from security lamps that carved long shadows across the asphalt. Nathan crouched behind a stack of discarded crates, his camera ready, its lens trained on the warehouse's side door. The lot was eerily still, the only sound the distant hum of traffic and the occasional drip of rainwater from a gutter. His heart thudded, not with fear, but with the sharp clarity of a man who knew the stakes. At 10:15 p.m., the door creaked open, spilling a sliver of yellow light onto the pavement. Vince Delgado stepped out, phone pressed to his ear, his gestures sharp and agitated. Even from this distance, Nathan could read the tension in his posture, shoulders hunched, free hands slicing the air. This wasn't the confident swagger of a man running a smooth operation. This was someone under pressure. Nathan adjusted the camera's focus, zooming in on Vince's face. The man's features were taut, his lips moving rapidly, though the words didn't carry. A second figure emerged from the shadows, and Nathan's breath caught. Lila Harper, the cheerful sales associate who'd impressed him that morning, stood before Vince, her usual warmth replaced by a hardened edge. Dressed in black, her blonde hair tucked under a dark cap, she looked like a different person, a conspirator, not a colleague. Their voices rose, a heated argument breaking the night's silence, though Nathan couldn't make out the details. "Come on," he whispered, steadying the camera. "Show me what you're really up to." At 10:45 p.m., a white van rolled into the lot, its headlights off, engine idling low. It circled to the loading dock, backing up to the large roll-up door with practiced precision. The driver stayed inside, a silhouette against the dashboard's faint glow. Two more figures emerged from the warehouse, pushing a motorcycle draped in moving blankets. Nathan's pulse quickened as he recognized the distinctive profile of a Ducati Panigale V4R, its retail value nearing $80,000. His fingers tightened on the camera, capturing every detail. The van's license plate, the figures, cautious movements, the timestamp glowing on the footage. But something felt off. Vince's nervous energy, the extra personnel, the hurried pace. This wasn't their usual routine. They were scared, and scared criminals made mistakes. Asterisk. Right on schedule at 11 p.m. A black SUV entered the lot, its tires crunching against the gravel. The younger customer from the showroom, the one with the flashy watch, stepped out, flanked by two new faces who moved with military precision, scanning the surroundings like predators. Nathan's stomach twisted. This wasn't about a single bike theft. It was a coordinated operation, far bigger than he'd imagined. His suspicion solidified when a second van appeared, then a third, their engines idling as more bikes were rolled out, each shrouded in blankets. Every machine represented tens of thousands of dollars, but more than that, each was a betrayal of the trust Nathan had instilled in Brooks bikes. His finger hovered over the emergency contact programmed into his phone, a direct line to a police sergeant he'd briefed earlier that day, but he hesitated, his instincts screaming that he was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. Then, at 11:15 p.m., a familiar SUV pulled into the lot, and Nathan's world tilted. Gavin Reed, his head of security for 15 years, stepped out, his broad frame unmistakable even in the dim light. Nathan's heart sank as Gavin walked straight to Vince, greeting him with a familiar handshake, their heads bent in quiet conversation. The final betrayal clicked into place like a lock snapping shut. Gavin hadn't been overlooking security breaches. He'd been enabling them. Nathan's mind raced, piecing together the triangle of deception. Vince's access to the warehouse, Lila's role with customers, Gavin's control over the security systems. They were a perfect machine, each cog turning in sync to bleed Brooks. Bikes dry, but why tonight? Why the rush to move so many bikes at once? Nathan's gaze darted to the loading dock, where the flurry of activity continued, bikes vanishing into the vans with alarming speed. He zoomed in on Vince, catching a fleeting look of panic as he glanced at his phone. Something or someone had spooked them. Nathan's mind flashed to the new digital inventory system, set to go live tomorrow, its advanced tracking features designed to eliminate discrepancies. That was it. The system would expose their scheme, and they were scrambling to clear out. Before it did, Nathan's finger rested on his phone, the sergeant's number glowing on the screen. One call would bring squad cars screaming into the lot, but years of business instinct held him back. Rush this, and he might miss the full scope of the operation. He needed to know who else was involved, how deep the rot ran. The camera whirred, softly, documenting every move, every face, as the night grew heavier with secrets. Nathan Brooks, disguised as Jake Sullivan, was no longer just an owner checking on his business. He was a man standing at the edge of a chasm, staring into the darkness of betrayal, and he wasn't turning back. The service lot of Brooks Bikes was a tinderbox of shadows and secrets, the air thick with the hum of idling engines and the sharp tang of gasoline. Nathan Brooks crouched behind his makeshift cover, the crates damp against his back, his camera capturing every move in the frenetic scene below. 3 vans stood ready at the loading dock, their maws swallowing motorcycles draped in blankets, each one a piece of his dealership, his dream, stolen by those he'd trusted. Vince Delgado's nervous pacing, Lila Harper's cold efficiency, and the arrival of buyers with military precision had already shaken Nathan to his core. But it was Gavin Reed's betrayal, his head of security shaking hands with Vince like an old friend, that had driven a knife through his heart. 15 years of loyalty, countless late-night strategy sessions, and now this, a conspiracy carved from the bones of Brooks Bikes. Nathan's finger hovered over his phone, the police sergeant's number glowing like a lifeline. He'd briefed the sergeant earlier, sharing just enough to ensure backup if things went south. But he'd held back, needing to see the full scope of the operation. Now, with bikes vanishing into vans and Gavin's complicity laid bare, the urge to act was overwhelming. Yet something held him back, a nagging sense that he was still missing a piece of the puzzle. Why the rush? Why tonight? The new inventory system set to launch tomorrow loomed in his mind, its airtight tracking a death knell for their scheme. They weren't just stealing. They were fleeing, taking everything they could before the noose tightened. Before he could decide, headlights swept across the lot, aggressive and unyielding, nothing like the cautious approach of the criminals. Vehicles, tires screeched, and a booming voice shattered the night through a megaphone. This is a raid. Everyone freeze. Chaos erupted. The buyers bolted toward their SUV. The van's engines roared to life, and Vince sprinted for the back fence, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Nathan's instincts kicked in. He abandoned his cover, gunned the engine of his rental car, and swung around the corner, cutting off Vince's escape route. The warehouse manager skidded to a halt, his face twisting in shock as Nathan stepped out, the dim security lights glinting off his fake glasses. "Going somewhere, Vince?" Nathan asked, his voice deadly calm despite the sirens wailing in the distance. The duffel bag hit the ground with a thud, spilling stacks of cash bound with rubber bands. their edges catching the light like dirty secrets. Vince's eyes narrowed, recognition dawning. "You," he spat, his voice venomous. Should have known the great Nathan Brooks couldn't resist playing detective. "Actually," Nathan said, stepping closer, blocking Vince's path to the fence, "I was just checking on customer satisfaction. Imagine my surprise when I found such dissatisfied employees." His tone was ice, but inside, his heart churned with betrayal and rage. Blue and red lights painted the lot in frantic pulses as police cruisers swarmed, officers shouting commands. In the distance, Nathan saw Lila being handcuffed, her cold facade crumbling into panic. Gavin struggled against two officers, his shouts incoherent, while Colin Hayes, the sales manager, stood frozen, his face pale as he clutched his phone. Nathan's camera, still rolling in his pocket, had captured it all: faces, plates, the undeniable evidence of their crimes. A tall woman in a dark suit approached, her FBI badge catching the light. "Mr. Brooks," she said, her voice steady. "I'm Special Agent Laura Kim. We've been tracking this operation for months. Your call to the sergeant gave us the final piece we needed." She gestured to the chaos around them. "The Iron Syndicate has been using dealerships like yours as fronts for money laundering. Thanks to you, we've just cracked a case spanning 3 states. Asterisk. Nathan nodded, his gaze fixed on Vince, now being cuffed by an officer. "How long did you know?" he asked, his voice low. "About the syndicate?" "Months," Lava replied, her expression grim. "They send teams like Delgado's to infiltrate dealerships, steal high-end bikes, and move cash across state lines. What we didn't know was their next target until your tip today." Asterisk. A commotion near the warehouse drew Nathan's attention. Gavin was shouting, his voice desperate. "Brooks set us up. He's been taking a cut from day one." The accusation stung, but Lava raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "Interesting," she said, "considering we have 6 months of surveillance showing Mr. Brooks had no involvement. Care to explain how he was running this and building a case against it?" Gavin's face fell, his lies collapsing under the weight of evidence. Nathan's eyes shifted to Colin, who was trembling, staring at his phone as if it held his salvation. "Agent Kim," Nathan said, nodding toward the sales manager, "you might want to check that phone. I suspect your evidence list is about to grow." Larva signaled her team, and within moments, they had Colin's device. The manager broke immediately, his voice shaking. "The account numbers, the network, it's all there. Vince said if I got caught, I could use it as leverage." He glanced at Nathan, misery etched on his face. "He told me you were behind it, that he was just following your orders." Nathan's jaw tightened, the pieces falling into place. Vince's team hadn't just stolen bikes. They'd built a paper trail to frame him if the scheme unraveled. Every forged document, every transaction, pointed to the owner as the mastermind, a classic insurance policy. "They counted on me staying in the dark," Nathan said, his voice hard. "They didn't expect me to go undercover." Laura's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Most owners don't. That's why they get away with it until now." As officers led Vince past, his glare burned with defiance. "You don't know what you've stepped into, Brooks," he hissed. "This is bigger than your precious dealership." Nathan met his gaze, unflinching. "Maybe, but you picked the wrong man to betray." Vince's hand twitched toward his jacket, but Nathan was faster, sweeping his legs out with a move from his college wrestling days. Vince hit the pavement hard, and officers swarmed to secure him. The lot grew quiet, the vans impounded, the bikes recovered. Nathan stood alone, the weight of the night pressing down like a physical burden. Lava approached, holding a thick file. "We'll need your help documenting what they stole. And you should know the syndicate might retaliate." Nathan shook, his head an idea forming. I've got a better plan. He pulled out his phone, scrolling to his PR team's contact. By morning, every news outlet in the Pacific Northwest would know how Brooks Bikes helped bust a major crime ring. No syndicate would touch his dealership after this. But as he looked at the neon sign glowing defiantly against the night, Nathan knew the real fight was just beginning to rebuild what had been broken, to restore the trust he'd lost. The dawn broke over Seattle with a tentative gray light, as if the city itself were reluctant to face the day. Nathan Brooks stood in the empty showroom of Brooks Bikes, the silence deafening where yesterday's chaos had reigned. The glass walls, usually gleaming with promise, bore faint smudges from the night's frenzy fingerprints of police, evidence markers, and the ghosts of betrayal. The motorcycles stood untouched, their chrome surfaces reflecting a distorted version of Nathan, still clad in his Jake Sullivan disguise, though the cap and glasses now rested on a nearby display case. The raid had ended hours ago, with Vince Delgado, Lila Harper, Gavin Reed, and Colin Hayes in custody, but the weight of their actions pressed down on Nathan like a physical burden. His dealership, his sanctuary, felt violated, its heart exposed and bleeding. He moved to the center of the showroom, his boots echoing on the polished floor, and stopped before a Triumph Bonneville, its classic lines a reminder of why he'd fallen in love with motorcycles. 20 years ago, he'd been a mechanic with dreams bigger than his bank account, rebuilding bikes in a cramped garage. Gavin had been there then, a gruff ex-cop who joined him early on, sharing beers and late-night plans to make Brooks Bikes a name that meant something. Nathan's throat tightened as he remembered Gavin's laugh, the way he'd clap Nathan on the shoulder after a tough day. How had it come to this? How had loyalty turned to treachery? The question gnawed at him, a wound that wouldn't close down at Ada Moss. Nathan gathered the remaining staff in the break room, a utilitarian space, with vending machines and a bulletin board plastered with safety notices. The team mechanics, salespeople, admin staff stood in a loose semicircle, their faces a mix of shock, fear, and curiosity. Nathan shed his disguise, standing before him as himself, his salt and pepper hair disheveled, his eyes heavy with sleeplessness. "By now, you've heard what happened," he began, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "A group of our own people we trusted used this dealership as a front for theft and money laundering. They betrayed us, our customers, and everything Brooks Bikes stands for." Murmurs rippled through the group, but Nathan raised a hand. "I take responsibility for not seeing it sooner. But I promise you this. We're going to rebuild, stronger and more transparent than ever. I need you with me." A young mechanic, his overalls stained with grease, spoke up. "Mr. Brooks, how do we know this won't happen again?" The question was blunt, but Nathan welcomed it. "We start with trust," he said. "Not blind trust, but the kind we earn together. New systems, new oversight, and an open door for any concerns. This is our home, and we're taking it back." The room nodded, some faces softening, others still wary. Nathan dismissed them to their tasks, knowing words alone wouldn't heal the rift. Action would dot as the staff dispersed. Nathan retreated to his office, a minimalist space with a desk, a single chair, and a framed photo of his first bike, a Yamaha he'd restored at 22. He sank into the chair, his mind drifting to Gavin. They'd met when Nathan was still scraping by, Gavin offering security advice in exchange for a discount on a Harley. Over the years, they'd built Brooks Bikes into a titan, Gavin's loyalty a constant Nathan had never questioned. The memory of Gavin's handshake with Vince in the service lawn burned in his mind, a betrayal that cut deeper than Vince's scheming or Lila's duplicity. Had Nathan been too distant, too focused on growth, to notice the cracks in his friend's allegiance? A knock at the door pulled him back. Special Agent Laura Kim stood in the doorway, her dark suit crisp despite the long night. "Mr. Brooks," she said, stepping inside. We need to talk." She carried a thick file, its edges worn from handling. "The Iron Syndicate's reach is wider than we thought. They've been using dealerships like yours to launder money. For years, stolen bikes as currency moved across state lines. Your evidence gave us a foothold, but this isn't over." Nathan leaned forward, his jaw tight. "What do you know about their next moves?" "They're rattled," Lavra said, her eyes sharp. "Losing Delgado's team hurts them, but they're not done. They might retaliate, target you, your business. We can offer protection." "No," Nathan said. The word final. An idea had been brewing since the raid. A way to turn this disaster into a shield. "I want to make Brooks Bikes untouchable. No syndicate will come near us if we're too visible." He pulled out his phone, scrolling to his PR team's contact. "I'm going public. By tomorrow, every news outlet in the Northwest will know. How we helped the FBI bust a major crime ring. We'll be the dealership that fought back." Laura's lips twitched, a rare hint of approval. "Bold move. Risky, but it could work. We'll need your help documenting the stolen inventory regardless. And if you change your mind about protection, call me." "I will," Nathan said. Though he knew he wouldn't. This was his fight now, not just for his business, but for the principles he'd built it on. Laura left, her file under her arm, and Nathan dialed his PR lead, outlining a strategy to spin the story into one of triumph. Over corruption. The call was brisk, professional, but as he hung up, exhaustion hit him like a wave. He walked to the showroom's glass doors, the morning light now stronger, painting the motorcycles in warm hues. The sight had once filled him with pride. Now it was a challenge, a call to rebuild what had been tarnished. Nathan's gaze lingered on a customer rousing a Kawasaki Ninja, a young man whose excitement reminded him of his own at age. This was what Brooks Bikes was for dreams, not deceit. He straightened, resolve hardening. The betrayal had nearly broken him, but it had also shown him what mattered. Vince, Lila, Gavin, Colin, they'd taken much, but they hadn't taken his fight. Nathan Brooks was down, but he was far from out, and the road ahead, though uncertain, was his to shape. 3 months after the raid that shook Brooks Bikes to its core, the dealership hummed with a renewed energy, like an engine tuned to perfection after a long overhaul. Nathan Brooks stood in the center of the showroom, the morning sun streaming through newly installed smart tint windows that shifted opacity with a touch, part of a comprehensive security upgrade that had transformed the space. The glass walls, once marred by the fingerprints of betrayal, now sparkled, reflecting rows of motorcycles that gleamed under soft LED lights. The air carried the familiar scent of leather and polish, but there was something new, a sense of purpose, a quiet defiance against the shadows that had nearly consumed them. Nathan, dressed in a simple button-down and jeans, no longer needed the Jake Sullivan disguise. He was himself again, but changed, his eyes carrying the weight of lessons hard-learned. The scars of that night, Vince Delgado's thefts, Lila Harper's duplicity, Gavin Reed's treachery, Colin Hayes' cowardice lingered in Nathan's mind, but they no longer defined him. The news cycle had done its work, thanks to his PR team's blitz. Headlines across the Pacific Northwest hailed Brooks Bikes as the dealership that fought back, helping the FBI dismantle a wing of the Iron Syndicate. The publicity had made the dealership untouchable, a beacon too bright for criminals to approach. But Nathan knew true recovery went beyond headlines. It was in the details, the systems, the people, the trust he was rebuilding brick by brick. A familiar voice broke his reverie. "Mr. Brooks," Samantha Cole called, striding toward him with a tablet in hand. The former FBI agent, now his head of security, had been an unexpected ally, trading her badge for a chance to revolutionize dealership safety from the private sector. Her dark hair was pulled back, her expression a mix of professionalism and a sly grin. The quarterly audit results are in. I think you'll like what you see." Nathan took the tablet, scrolling through the report. Every bike was accounted for, every transaction transparent, every security protocol followed to the letter. Customer satisfaction scores had soared to an all-time high, a testament to the staff's renewed commitment. "This is good work, Samantha," he said, handing the tablet back. "Better than good." She gestured toward the redesigned warehouse, visible through a transparent partition. The tracker programs exceeding expectations. Every high-end model now has a GPS unit, completely invisible unless you know where to look. And the blockchain-based verification system? Forging ownership records is impossible now. They walked toward the warehouse, passing the service department, where mechanics worked in a space that resembled a high-tech lab more than a traditional garage. Tools were digitally tracked, repairs documented with video, parts verified through a secure supply chain. The changes were costly, but Nathan saw them as investments in trust. As they reached the warehouse, its doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing neat rows of motorcycles secured with state-of-the-art locks. A group of new employees stood near the training area, their orientation in full swing. Nathan deviated from his path, drawn to their fresh faces, a mix of excitement and nervousness that reminded him of his own early days. These weren't ordinary hires. They were part of his redemption program, designed to give second chances to those with minor legal missteps who wanted to turn their lives around. "Morning, everyone," he called, his voice carrying across the space. The group turned, some straightening, others fidgeting under his gaze. "I'm sure you've heard about our history," Nathan said, his tone warm but firm. 3 months ago, we uncovered a criminal operation right here in this warehouse. It could have defined us, broken us. Instead, we chose to learn from it." He gestured to the transparent walls, the cameras, the open layout. "Everything you see was built with 2 goals: protecting our inventory and earning our customers' trust. But the real security isn't in the tech, it's in you." The words landed with weight, and the new hires nodded, their expressions shifting from uncertainty to resolve. One raised his hand, a young man with a scar above his eyebrow. "Mr. Brooks, I'm Jake. Used to run with a rough crowd street racing, got 6 months for it. Just thank you for trusting us." His voice cracked slightly, and Nathan saw himself and the kid all those years ago, scraping by with nothing but a wrench and a dream. "Trust is earned," Nathan replied, meeting Jake's gaze. "But everyone deserves a chance to earn it." He smiled, the moment grounding him in why he'd fought so hard to save Brooks' bikes. As the orientation resumed, Nathan turned to Samantha, who was watching with a knowing look. "Speaking of trust," she said, lowering her voice, "the inter-dealership alert system you pushed for? It stopped a copycat scheme in Portland last week. Pacific Motors didn't stand a chance against our playbook." Her grin widened. "You're changing the game, Nathan." He chuckled, the sound lighter than it felt in months. "Good. Let's keep it that way." They continued their tour, but Nathan's attention snagged on a scene in the showroom. A young couple stood beside a Triumph Street Triple. The woman perched on the bike while her partner snapped photos, their laughter echoing. The sight stirred something in Nathan, the pure, unfiltered joy of motorcycling, the reason he'd started this journey. He paused, watching them sign the paperwork, their faces glowing with the thrill of joining the riding community. "Samantha," he said, an idea sparking, "what do you say we move up the timeline on Project Renaissance?" Her eyes widened at the mention of the community outreach program, free safety courses, mentorship for at-risk youth, partnerships with local law enforcement slated for next year. "We weren't planning to launch for months," she said. But her tone was intrigued. "Life's too short to wait on good ideas." Nathan replied, already drafting an email to his management team. The couple rode off on their new Triumph, their helmets glinting in the sun, and Nathan felt a surge of purpose. Brooks Bikes wasn't just recovering. It was evolving, becoming more than a dealership, a beacon of trust, second chances, and the open road. But as he glanced at the warehouse, a flicker of caution remained. The Iron Syndicate was still out there, and Nathan knew rebuilding was only half the battle. The real test was yet to come. The Seattle skyline shimmered under a rare April sun, its light filtering through the open doors of Brooks Bikes' warehouse, where Nathan Brooks stood addressing a small crowd of employees, community leaders, and local press. The space, once a hub of betrayal, had been transformed into a stage for renewal. Its concrete floor swept clean, its walls adorned with banners proclaiming Project Renaissance, riding toward a brighter future. 3 months after the raid that exposed Vince Delgado's criminal ring, Nathan had turned the dealership's darkest hour into a catalyst for change. The redemption program was thriving. Security upgrades had set a new industry standard, and now, Project Renaissance, a community outreach initiative, was his boldest step yet. Free motorcycle safety courses, mentorship for at-risk youth, and partnerships with law enforcement to promote responsible riding. It was more than a program. It was a mission to share the joy of motorcycling and rebuild trust. Nathan adjusted the microphone, his voice steady as he faced the crowd. Brooks Bikes has always been about more than selling motorcycles, he said, his eyes sweeping over familiar faces: mechanics, salespeople, and Jake, the former street racer now a star trainee. It's about connection, freedom, and second chances. Project Renaissance is our commitment to this community, to giving back what this industry gave me, a purpose. Applause rippled through the room, and Nathan caught Samantha Cole's nod from the sidelines, her expression one of quiet pride. The former FBI agent had become his right hand, her expertise shaping the dealership's new era. As the crowd dispersed for a tour of the upgraded facilities, Samantha approached, her tablet glowing with data. "The response is incredible," she said, scrolling through early registration numbers for the safety courses. "We've got over 100 sign-ups already, and the mentorship program's waitlist is growing. You were right to push the timeline." She paused, a grin breaking through her usual professionalism. "Oh, and that alert system you championed? It's spreading. Another dealership in Tacoma just adopted it after the Portland bust. You're not just saving Brooks Bikes, you're rewriting the playbook." Nathan chuckled, the sound carrying a warmth he hadn't felt in months. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've got work to do." But her words stirred something in him, a flicker of the fire that had driven him as a young mechanic. He glanced at a nearby Ducati, its sleek lines evoking memories of his first ride, a beat-up Yamaha, its engine sputtering as he tore through the Cascades, the wind drowning out his doubts. That was the moment he'd fallen in love with motorcycles. Not for their mechanics, but for their promise, a road that could take you anywhere if you were brave enough to ride it. Project Renaissance was his way of sharing that promise, of giving others the chance to find their own path. Later that afternoon, Nathan joined a safety course in the dealership's training lot, a paved expanse now marked with cones and chalk lines. A dozen learners, mostly teens from local youth centers, listened as an instructor explained throttle control, their helmets bobbing with excitement. Nathan, dressed in a Brooks Bikes jacket, mingled with them, sharing stories of his early rides and the mistakes he'd made, like the time he'd overestimated a turn and ended up in a ditch, laughing through the mud. The kids hung on his words, their wariness melting into grins. One girl, a wiry 15-year-old named Mia, raised her hand. "Mr. Brooks, how do you keep going after everything that happened here? The news said you almost lost it all." Asterisk. The question caught him off guard, but he met her gaze. "You don't rebuild by looking back," he said. You do it by believing in what's ahead and in the people around you. Mia nodded, her eyes bright, and Nathan felt a surge of hope. This was what Project Renaissance was about. Not just teaching kids to ride, but showing them they could rise above their pasts. Just as he was doing that, as the session wrapped up, Nathan walked back to the showroom. The sound of a test-ridden Kawasaki echoing behind him, its roar a reminder of why he'd never walked away. Samantha caught up, her expression shifting to concern. "Got a call from Laura Kim while you were out there," she said, lowering her voice. "She couldn't reach you. Said it's urgent." Nathan's stomach tightened. He pulled out his phone, finding a missed call and a text from Laura. "Call me. Syndicate activity picking up. You're still on their radar." The words were a cold splash of reality, cutting through the day's optimism. He'd known the Iron Syndicate wouldn't vanish quietly, but the timing on the day of Project Renaissance's launch felt like a deliberate jab. "What did she say?" he asked, his voice steady but edged with caution. "Not much, just that she's got new intel," Samantha replied. "Something about a splinter group looking to make a statement. She wants to meet tomorrow." She studied him, her eyes narrowing. "You're not thinking of going lone wolf again, are you?" Nathan managed a half smile. "Not this time. We handled this together." But as they walked past a row of gleaming bikes, their reflections distorted in the chrome, he couldn't shake the sense of a storm brewing. The Syndicate's shadow loomed, a reminder that rebuilding trust was a battle fought on multiple fronts. Back in his office, Nathan drafted an email to his management team, outlining plans to expand Project Renaissance's reach, more courses, more mentors, more partnerships. The program was his passion, but it was also his defiance, a way to prove that Brooks Bikes was more than a target for criminals. As he hit send, he glanced at the framed photo on his desk, his first Yamaha. Battered but proud. The memory grounded him, a touchstone in a world that kept shifting. Project Renaissance was just the beginning, but the road ahead was fraught with challenges. Nathan leaned back, the hum of the dealership around him, and steeled himself for what was coming. The fight for Brooks Bikes wasn't over, but he was ready to ride it out. The Seattle dusk draped Brooks Bikes in a veil of amber and shadow, the neon sign's blue glow flickering like a heartbeat against the fading light. Nathan Brooks stood in his office, the framed photo of his first Yamaha casting a quiet reminder of the road he'd traveled. Laura Kim's text from the previous day, syndicate activity picking up. "You're still on their radar," had reignited the vigilance that had simmered since the raid. The launch of Project Renaissance had been a triumph, a beacon of hope for the dealership and the community, but the Iron Syndicate's shadow loomed, a persistent threat that refused to fade. Nathan's fingers traced the edge of his desk, his mind racing. He'd turned Brooks Bikes into a fortress of transparency and trust, but fortresses could still be breached, and he wasn't about to let his guard down. Samantha Cole knocked and entered, her expression taut, a manila envelope in hand. "Laura's intel came through," she said, sliding the envelope across the desk. "It's not good. A splinter group from the syndicate is planning something here, soon. They're calling it a message for what we did to their operation." Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of concern. "Laura's on her way, but we need to move fast." Nathan opened the envelope, pulling out surveillance photos and a brief report. Grainy images showed two men in a dimly lit parking lot, one holding a canister that looked suspiciously like an incendiary device. A handwritten note from Laura read, "Possible sabotage. Target, Brooks Bikes warehouse. Timing unclear." Nathan's jaw tightened. The warehouse, with its rows of high-end motorcycles and the heart of Project Renaissance's training program, was the dealership's lifeline. An attack there wouldn't just cost inventory. It would shatter the trust he'd fought to rebuild. "They're not just after bikes," he said. his voice low. "They want to hit us where it hurts most." Samantha nodded. "I've doubled the security patrols and activated the new cameras. But we need to know their plan. When, how, who." She hesitated, then added, "Jake mentioned something this morning. Said he overheard a name in the street racing scene. Talon. Supposedly a syndicate fixer, known for dirty jobs. Could be our guy." Nathan's mind flashed to Jake, the redemption program trainee whose candor had already proven valuable. "Get him in here," he said. "If he's got a lead, we're following it." While Samantha stepped out to fetch Jake, Nathan called Laura, putting her on speaker. The FBI agent's voice crackled through, brisk and focused. "Nathan, we've tracked Talon to a dive bar in Tacoma. He's meeting a contact tonight, 9 p.m. I'm sending a team, but if you've got anything on your end, now's the time." "Jake's got a name," Nathan replied. "Talon's tied to the street scene. We're digging deeper. Can you get us eyes on that bar?" Laura agreed, promising real-time updates, and hung up as Samantha returned with Jake. The young man's scar gleamed under the office lights, his posture tense but eager. "Mr. Brooks, I didn't want to overstep," Jake said, "but I heard Talon's name back when I ran with racers. His bad news sets up deals, covers tracks. Word is, he's pissed about the syndicate's bust and wants to make an example. Where's he operate?" Nathan asked, leaning forward. "Old warehouse district, near the docks," Jake said. "There's a spot racers use for meets. If he's planning something, that's where he'll be." Nathan exchanged a glance with Samantha. It was a lead, thin but actionable. He thanked Jake, sending him back to training, and turned to Samantha. "We're not waiting for Laura's team. Let's check the docks ourselves discreetly." By 8:30 p.m., Nathan and Samantha were parked in a shadowed alley near the Tacoma docks, the air heavy with salt and diesel. The dive bar, a squat building with flickering neon, buzzed with activity. Nathan, back in a nondescript jacket, scanned the lot through binoculars, spotting a man matching Talon's description. Lean, tattooed, carrying a backpack. "That's him," Samantha whispered, her hand on a radio linked to Laura's team. Talon slipped into a side alley, meeting two others, their gestures quick and furtive. Nathan's gut churned as he saw one pass a small device, its shape eerily similar to the canister in Laura's photos. "We need to move," Nathan said, his voice low. "If that's what I think it is, they're not waiting." Samantha radioed Laura, who confirmed her team was 10 minutes out. Too long. Nathan made a call. His security system's remote lockdown could seal the warehouse, but it wouldn't stop an attack already in motion. He and Samantha tailed Talon's group on foot, sticking to the shadows as they moved toward a van parked near the docks. The men were loading equipment, their voices hushed but urgent. Nathan caught fragments. "Warehouse, midnight. Send a message." The clock read 9:15 p.m. Nathan's mind raced. Midnight was too close, and the warehouse was vulnerable despite its upgrades. He signaled Samantha, and they retreated to their car, speeding back to Brooks' bikes. As they arrived, Nathan activated the lockdown, steel shutters slamming over the warehouse doors, cameras sweeping the perimeter. Samantha checked the feeds, spotting a figure near the back fence, a lone man. Talon's accomplice, planting a device against the wall. "Got him," she said, alerting security. Nathan grabbed a flashlight and sprinted out, adrenaline surging. The man froze as Nathan's beam caught him, a crude incendiary device in hand. "Drop it," Nathan barked, his voice cutting through the night. The man hesitated, then bolted, but Samantha was faster, tackling him with a move straight from her. FBI days. Security swarmed, securing the suspect, while Nathan disarmed the device, a makeshift firebomb meant to gut the warehouse. Laura's team arrived minutes later, taking the man into custody. "He's talking already," Laura said, joining them. Talon's group was a warning shot. The syndicate's fracturing, but they're desperate. Nathan stood in the lot, the device now in an evidence bag, his heart pounding. Desperate or not, they didn't get through, he said, his voice firm. The warehouse stood intact, its bike safe, its mission unbroken. Samantha clapped his shoulder, a rare smile breaking through. You're making it hard for them to win, Nathan. He nodded, but as he looked at the neon sign glowing defiantly, he knew the syndicate's desperation made them unpredictable. Brooks' bikes were stronger, but the fight wasn't over. Not yet. The late afternoon sun painted golden streaks across the warehouse floor of Brooks' bikes, where Nathan Brooks stood watching a new batch of Redemption Program trainees unpack crates of safety gear. The space, once a nexus of Vince Delgado's betrayal, now buzzed with purpose. Its transparent walls and state-of-the-art locks, a testament to the dealership's rebirth. 4 months had passed since the raid that exposed the Iron Syndicate's operation, and the scars, Lila Harper's deception, Gavin Reed's treachery, Colin Hayes' cowardice, had faded into lessons etched deep in Nathan's soul. Brooks' Bikes wasn't just back. It was thriving, a beacon of trust and innovation in an industry that had taken notice. Nathan, in a simple jacket and jeans, felt the weight of the journey, but also its rewards. His heart lighter than it had been in years. Samantha Cole approached, her tablet glowing with the latest metrics. Final numbers for Project Renaissances. First quarter, she said, her voice carrying the quiet pride of someone who'd seen the impossible become reality. 300 safety course graduates, 50 mentorship pairings, and partnerships with 6 local police departments. Oh, and the inter-dealership alert system is now standard in 20 dealerships across the Northwest. She handed him the tablet, a rare smile breaking through. You didn't just save Brooks' bikes, Nathan. You're reshaping the game. Nathan scrolled through the data, nodding. Every metric was a victory, but the real triumph was in the faces around him, mechanics fine-tuning engines, salespeople guiding customers with genuine enthusiasm, trainees like Jake learning not just a trade, but a way forward. Couldn't have done it without you, he said, meeting Samantha's gaze. You took a chance on this place. She shrugged, but her eyes softened. You made it worth taking. They walked toward the showroom, where a young couple admired a Kawasaki Ninja, their excitement palpable as they signed for their first bike. The sight stirred Nathan, a reminder of why he'd fought so hard. Motorcycles weren't just machines. They were dreams, connections, stories waiting to be written on the open road. His thoughts drifted to the previous night, when Special Agent Laura Kim had called with an update. The Iron Syndicate's splinter group, led by the elusive Talon, had collapsed under the weight of arrests and infighting. The sabotage attempt Nathan and Samantha thwarted had been their last gasp, a desperate bid to reclaim power. They're done for now, Laura had said, her voice crackling over the line. Your dealership's too high profile, too secure. But stay sharp, crime doesn't sleep. Nathan had thanked her, a quiet resolve settling in. The syndicate's shadow had shrunk, but vigilance was now part of his DNA. In the training lot, Nathan joined a Project Renaissance event, where teens from the mentorship program practiced slow-speed maneuvers, their laughter mingling with the purr of vengeance. Mia, the 15-year-old who'd asked him about resilience, rode up, her helmet glinting. Mr. Brooks, I got my learner's permit, she announced, beaming. Gonna ride legal, just like you said. Nathan grinned, clapping her shoulder. That's the way, Mia. Keep the road honest. Watching her rejoin the group, he felt a surge of pride. Project Renaissance wasn't just a program. It was a legacy, a way to ensure the joy of motorcycling reached those who needed it most. The event drew a small crowd, parents, community leaders, even a local reporter snapping photos. Nathan caught Jake's eye, the former street racer now mentoring a younger trainee, and nodded in approval. Second chances weren't just words here. They were the foundation of something extraordinary. Back in his office, Nathan sat at his desk, the framed Yamaha photo a touchstone of his beginnings. He thought of the kid he'd been scraping by, fueled by passion and grit, and the man he'd become, tested by betrayal but stronger for it. The Iron Syndicate had nearly destroyed Brooks' bikes, but in facing them head-on, Nathan had rediscovered his purpose. He pulled up an email from his management team, confirming plans to expand Project Renaissance nationwide. The road ahead was long, but for the first time in years, it felt clear. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Nathan took a final walk through the dealership, every corner holding a memory, some painful, some proud. The showroom's lights cast a warm glow, the bikes standing like promises kept. Samantha joined him, checking her watch. Staff meeting in 10. Ready to talk next steps? Nathan nodded, a quiet satisfaction settling in. Let's keep building. The darkness of the past had been replaced by transparency, the suspicion by trust, the fear by hope. Brooks Bikes wasn't just on track. It was blazing a new trail, one that would inspire others to ride with integrity and courage. As he looked, and his team, new and veteran, united in their commitment, Nathan knew the worst storms had led to the clearest skies. This story of Nathan Brooks and Brooks Bikes is a powerful testament to the human spirit's capacity for resilience and redemption. It reminds us that trust, though fragile, can be rebuilt through courage and community. Nathan's journey from a betrayed owner to a visionary leader teaches us that setbacks are not endings, but opportunities to grow stronger. The Redemption Program and Project Renaissance embody the belief that everyone deserves a second chance, a message that resonates in a world often quick to judge. The story also underscores the importance of vigilance and integrity, showing that true success lies not in wealth, but in the impact we have on others. For more tales of triumph, courage, and human connection, subscribe to Legacy Stories on YouTube. Join our community to discover narratives that inspire and uplift, and let's ride this journey together.